He paid for her coffee when her card was rejected, not knowing she was the top boss who had been observing him. The morning rush hummed like noise in the cafe at the foot of Donovan Tower. Baristas called names. Steam hissed from the espresso maker, and the smell of roasted beans lingered in the air like a sign. Rachel Donovan, 30, CEO of the tower's highest floor company, entered. She wore a crisp white shirt, a gray pencil skirt, and walked with purpose. No one truly noticed her, not as CEO, not as more than just another worker needing coffee. She came to the counter, tapping her phone while juggling her tablet and a folder tucked under one arm. "One big latte with an extra shot, please," she said, her voice smooth but a little far away. "That'll be $5.85, the barista said happily. Rachel took out her card and put it in. The machine flashed. Failed. She frowned, trying again. Still failed. Oh, wait. She reached into her leather bag, searching the side pocket, then the middle. Nothing. Her wallet was not there. Fear grabbed her chest. She never forgot her wallet. Never, it seemed, until today. "I'm really sorry," she said, ashamed. "I think I left my wallet in my office. Could you maybe keep it for a moment? I can go up quickly and—" The barista looked at the longer line behind her, her lips getting thin. That's when a soft voice broke the quiet worry. "It's just coffee. Happens to the best of us." Rachel turned. A man moved forward from the side. He was tall, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing old jeans, a navy polo, and a guard badge fastened to his belt. His brown hair was short and tidy, and his face was calm. His name tag read, Caleb. Before she could object, he raised his phone and tapped the touchless reader. The payment went through with a soft sound. The barista relaxed. "Thank you, sir." Caleb gave a slight nod and turned to Rachel. "Here," he said, holding the coffee out. "No big deal." She took it, surprised. "Wait, you don't have to?" "I know," he shrugged, "but if it were me, you'd do the same." There was something calming about his voice. No pity, no show, just simple, calm kindness. Rachel smiled softly. "Still, thank you." Caleb cut in with a slight smile. "No need." As she moved her bag, the hot cup tipped and some drops spilled onto her shirt. She frowned. "Of course, perfect." Without a word, Caleb reached into his back pocket and took out a clean napkin. He stepped close, not too close, and softly dabbed the spot near her neck bone. His touch was polite, exact, like someone who knew what was okay. "There," he said, "mostly gone." Rachel looked up at him. He was already walking off. "Wait, what's your name?" He paused, looked back at her. "Caleb." And then he walked off, leaving by the door near the elevator spot. Rachel stood still, holding her cup, the napkin still in her hand. Around her, the line started again. Orders were called, coffee poured. But something had changed, a small, easy action. A man who didn't know her job or pay or face, and yet he had paid for her coffee, wiped her shirt, and left without waiting for thanks or praise. She looked down at the napkin, the light mark of coffee now drying on its rim. People were often kind when they knew who she was, when they hoped for something back. But Caleb, he didn't even ask her name. Rachel took a long drink from her coffee, still warm, still perfect. And then, with a thinking frown and something shifting in her heart, she headed toward the elevators. Her first meeting of the day was still waiting, but now her thoughts were somewhere entirely different, with a man named Caleb and a coffee she would never forget. The meeting room on the 26th floor was glass-sided and quiet, with nothing but the soft hum of a coffee machine in the corner and the steady sound of laptop keys. Rachel sat at the top of the long, dark wood table, sleeves rolled up, a tidy pile of printed papers in front of her. It was her own choice to check the list of candidates for the new local tech project, something she'd fought for after years of trusting too much in team checks and cold computer programs. The risks were big. Donovan Enterprises was growing its computer part into 3 new places. This team would set the groundwork. Rachel wanted people with toughness, not just fancy papers. She looked at one paper, then another. Good people, yes, but something about them being alike made her uneasy. Too many flawless lines, too many tricky words. She reached for the next folder and then she stopped. The name at the top stopped her completely. Caleb Morgan. Her eyes narrowed. She remembered that name. She had just read it, not in the accepted pile, but in the turned down list. She reached into the thrown out pile and searched through until she found it. His paper had been marked in red ink. Job gap, not fully explained, throw away. But now, seeing it again, she read it with more care. Once a main computer engineer, Halbert Tech. Her heart paused a bit. Halbert was serious business, important, picky. She scanned down. 8 years experience, many praises, then 3 years with no records, and now a half-time building guard job. No explanation other than an unclear personal break. Rachel leaned back in her chair, hitting a pin on her knee. The Caleb she'd met at the cafe, calm, firm, kind, hadn't looked like a man who could not keep a job. He had looked like someone who had picked calm over mess. She stood, crossed the room, and pulled up the online form on the company portal. Attached to the application was a small note in the extra notes part. It simply read, "Looking to get back into tech at my own speed. I'm not wanting pity, just meaning." Rachel's throat closed, her fingers paused above the keyboard, then began typing fast, looking through company files, LinkedIn, public facts. And there it was, an article from 4 years ago, hidden deep in old local news files. Tech boss loses family in sad highway crash, leaves company weeks later. She didn't need to read the whole story. The photo told enough. Caleb, younger but known, standing at a memory spot with a single white rose in his hand. Rachel leaned back, her breath light. She was not a person easily upset, but something about the quietness of his paper, the honor in it, touched her. She looked back at the printed page. It felt like holding the top of a huge ice piece, and someone in HR, had looked at that blank space and seen a fault. She saw a struggle. Rachel picked up her pen and drew over the red line. Then, next to his name, she wrote in dark black ink, "Top check, direct talk with the CEO." When her assistant returned with coffee, Rachel didn't look up. "Emily," she said calmly, "I want you to get all the HR notes on this one, Caleb Morgan, and set up a private single meeting. No group, just him and me." Emily blinked. He's one of the turned down ones." "Not anymore," Rachel said without looking up. 2 hours later, back in her office, Rachel closed the door and looked out the tall windows at the city below. The sun was just starting to push through the morning fog. People down on the street looked like small toys running toward unknown aims. She thought of Caleb's words again, soft and simple. "If it were me, you'd do the same." But would she? Had she? How many people had she overlooked because they didn't fit well into the rules? She remembered the way he had moved back after paying, giving her room. The way he had wiped the coffee from her shirt with calm care, never making it strange. The way he walked away as if wanting nothing, not even a thank you. And now here he was again, not in the building by chance, but on a list she had never looked at until today. A man who had once managed groups of 50 engineers, who had lost all, and instead of falling apart, chose to build again with what he had. Honor, quietness, and a job that let him live. Rachel looked back at her planner and marked the next Thursday afternoon. Below it she wrote, "Interview Caleb Morgan. Understand him, not the paper." The late afternoon sun shone through the tall windows of Rachel Donovan's corner office, making a gold light on the glass table where 2 mugs of coffee sat, one not touched, one growing cool. Caleb Morgan stood by the door, not sure where to put his hands. He looked a little odd in the smooth new room, his security uniform clean but simple, his stand polite but careful. Rachel pointed to the seat across from her. "Please have a seat." He listened quietly, but his eyes searched hers, calm and ready, like someone used to not knowing. "I guess you're asking why I asked you here," Rachel began, holding her hands gently on the table. Caleb gave a slight smile. "You mean besides the clear coffee moment?" She laughed once only and nodded. "Plus other things." She reached for a folder on her desk and slowly opened it. Caleb Morgan, old main computer engineer, 8 years at Halbert Tech, many praises, then 3 years with no records, and now a half-time building guard job. "You didn't include any of that in your intro letter." He did not react. "I didn't think it would matter. Most people quit reading after the blank." Rachel leaned her head. "And if they hadn't? If someone had read to the end? He hesitated, then shrugged softly. They'd see someone building again his own way. She watched him for a long time. You're too skilled for any jobs we put up, you know that. Yes, he said softly. So why apply for something beginner? Why not wait for the boss doors to open again? His voice was quiet but steady. Because I didn't want pity. I wanted purpose, a new start I worked for, not one given to me from pity or interest. Rachel nodded slowly. There was something about the calmness in him. Still, firm. It wasn't ego, it wasn't proudness, it was clearness. She looked down at the folder, then back at him. Do you know what surprised me the most? She asked. He shook his head. That morning when you paid for my coffee, you didn't stay. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't even let me thank you. He smiled only a bit. It didn't feel like something I needed thanks for. But it was, she said softly. Not just the coffee, but how you did it. You saw me just a person in a time of need, not a CEO, not a new face to wow. Caleb said nothing, but his look softened. Rachel reached into her drawer and took out a thick letter. She pushed it across the table. This isn't because of the coffee, she said, and it's not from a debt. He picked up the letter and opened it. Inside was an official job offer, not for a lower job, but for main system advisor on the new computer setup project, one of the company's most grand efforts in years. I read your file, Rachel continued, her voice low. But more importantly, I listened and I saw what most people didn't. Caleb looked at her, his eyes firm, but there was something weak in them now, like the feeling of being seen after a long time hidden. I'm not doing this because I owe you, she said. I'm doing this because I need someone like you. A long, quiet moment passed. Finally, Caleb nodded once, then put the letter back on the table. I'll accept, he said, but on one condition. Rachel lifted a brow. And what's that? He smiled softly. You let me pay for the next coffee. She laughed. Deal. The elevator rang softly as Caleb stepped onto the 22nd floor of Donovan Tower, the boss and plan part. The floor looked nothing like the lobby where he had stood months ago as a half-time security guard. Here, the lighting was warmer, the air gently smelled of wood and lemon, and the walls were lined with smooth digital screens showing live info and project views. His ID badge now read, Tech Plan Advisor. He touched it gently, still not fully used to the name. From the moment he stepped into the open office area, he felt their gazes. Some were curious, others careful, a few plainly doubting. He heard it by the coffee station later that morning. Two young analysts whispering just loud enough, Is that the guy? The security guard the CEO picked herself? Yeah, the other whispered. Went from opening doors to running projects. Must have made a really great cup of coffee. Caleb didn't move. He'd been through worse, but it still hurt. His first meetings were quiet. He was polite, watching, saying little unless asked. But in the silence, he was learning about the systems, the gaps, the problems no one had fixed. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't see them like he did. That evening, as he got ready to leave, an email appeared in his inbox. Subject, Just in Case, from Rachel Donovan. Attached was a private link to the company's inside plan drawing and a secret entry pass to the newest system change records. No note, no comment, just what he needed. Caleb smiled quietly. Each day after, he came in early, left late. He asked questions, sometimes to no one in particular. He reviewed lines of code and system maps with the exactness of someone who had made them from the ground up. Slowly, one by one, the team began to listen. And Rachel, she didn't hover. She never sat in his meetings or controlled his work too much. But every now and then, he'd find small actions. An extra whiteboard put next to his desk, a new data map permit added to his account. She was watching quietly, the way he had once watched her from behind a building's entrance, keeping doors open while hiding his own past. The main moment came during the third week. It was a Monday morning checkup meeting. The room was packed. Planners, project leaders, IT chiefs. Caleb stood at the screen, dressed in a navy jacket over a simple shirt, no tie. He cleared his throat once. I checked our present computer setup, he said, pulling up a diagram. And I found 3 extra parts in data link ways that are costing us around $420K each year. A few heads lifted. He clicked again. With a stacked saving plan and smart storage, he pointed to the example, we could reduce that by 85% within 6 months. Silence followed, then whispers, then questions, real ones, tech, keen, urgent. Caleb answered each plainly, surely, like a man who hadn't just worn a badge, but had carried the load of true duty. When the session ended, the room was still thinking. Rachel, who had sat quietly at the back the whole time, stood. She walked forward slowly, her shoes soft on the floor. Then, with a calm smile, she looked around and said simply, I read his file. I read what was not said, and today he just understood the mood. She turned to Caleb, her eyes warm with something more than liking. I chose right. Applause began again, cameras flashing. But while her name was written in bold on the paper she got, while her photo would be shown in business papers the following week, Rachel's eyes looked at the back of the room. Past the lights, past the applause, Caleb stood near the exit, not on stage, not in the bright light, just as he preferred. He caught her eye. She gave a small nod. The clock on the wall moved past 9:45 p.m. Most of Donovan Tower had gone dark, the city lights outside making long lights against the tall windows. But on the 22nd floor, 2 lights still burned. One in Rachel's office and the other at the far corner where Caleb worked, his screen bright with flowing lines of code. Rachel had been staring at the same money report for 20 minutes, her head aching. Her jacket hung over the back of her chair, high shoes off under her desk. Her hair, usually perfect, was coming loose from its bun. It had been a tough day. A sudden budget cut in a smaller company, a stressed call with money people, and 3 one after another meetings that gave no rest. She hardly saw Caleb leave his seat until she heard the soft tap on her glass door. Looking up, she saw no one, but on the edge of her desk sat a white clay cup, steam rising softly from the top. Chamomile, her favorite. Next to it, a small folded note written in strong, slow writing. You look tired. The world can wait. She stared at it for a long moment, something tightening in her heart. No one had said anything like that to her in years. Everyone thought she could deal with anything because she always had, because she never showed weakness. Because when you were the boss, kindness was often swapped for duty. Rachel leaned back in her chair, hands holding the warm cup. She looked toward the far end of the floor, but Caleb's light was off now. He had left without a word. She should have expected that. The next morning brought a storm, not of weather, but of company mess. A secret company note had caused trouble among local teams. The media found out. There was guessing, fear, and in the urgent meeting that followed, Rachel found herself in the middle of a blame group. How could this happen under your eye? We should have had better checks. Our leaders even agreed? The questions came fast, sharp, hidden in polite words, but full of blame. Rachel sat at the head of the table, back straight, jaw firm, taking each word without reacting. But her fingers turned white around the pen in her hand. Then Caleb spoke. He hadn't planned to, but something about the way Rachel's eyes had blinked just once, barely seen, made him move. With respect, he said, his voice calm but clear. If we are going to doubt leadership, let's be right. Rachel wasn't the leak, she wasn't the bottleneck, and she certainly wasn't the one who didn't point out the old talking rules. That was my team, and I take that blame. Silence. Caleb continued, but while you're blaming others, she's been in this office at midnight sorting out the trouble. So unless anyone here has worked more hours this week than she has, I suggest we put our minds on fixing, not blaming. A pause. Then Rachel spoke, her voice firm, but softer than usual. Thank you, Caleb. The meeting continued, less mean now, more clear. When it ended, Rachel stayed behind, piling up papers quietly. Caleb stood by the door, waiting. When she finally looked up, her look had changed, less careful, kinder. Why did you do that? She asked quietly. Because you were alone, he said simply. And I know what that feels like. She crossed her arms, not as a shield, but showing a soft spot. You really believe that's enough? Just showing up? Caleb nodded. It's where everything starts. For the first time, Rachel didn't have a quick answer. She just looked at him, really looked, and realized somehow in this fast world of company fights, he had found a way to reach her. Not through power, not through plan, but through calmness, through seeing. Later that night, she found herself reading his note again. You look tired. The world can wait. And for the first time, maybe it could. The big hall of Donovan Corp's 10-year celebration shone under glass lights. The room was filled with bosses, money people, news, and happy co-workers. Cheers were given to 10 years of new ideas and growth. 4-string players played softly near the high stage. The mood was perfect, joyful. But Rachel Donovan felt an odd mix of pride and tiredness. She had managed every detail, yet this night felt unreal. She wore a long, dark blue dress. The deep cut at her back showed just a bit of skin, and the cloth shined when she moved under the warm lights. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves, and her makeup was calm, sure, fancy. But she held the load of the night on her shoulders. Caleb Morgan stood by the service doors watching. He was in a simple suit. No fancy extras, no bright wrist links, just clean, simple, true. He had arrived early to help Rachel with party plans, making sure stage lights were soft, checking mics, and quietly gathering staff. He had slipped away to put on formal clothes, but his mind was still on her. Earlier in the evening, he noticed her tremble as she met guests near the north window, cold air from the open balcony. With careful timing, he put a soft, dark blue wrap over her shoulders before she saw him. His fingers touched hers quickly as he smoothed the folds. She felt it even then. Now, as the last talk ended and the 4 players ended on a soft note, the gathered people went toward the eating place. Cups clicked, smiles spread. Rachel smiled, thanked people, accepted praise. But her thoughts were elsewhere. A quiet fell. The fireworks were planned. Opening the southwest balcony doors, Rachel stepped out, moving the wrap around her thin shoulders and stopping as the warm air touched. Caleb followed a few steps behind. The sky burst with color, first red, then bright blue, a shower of gold. Each burst lit their faces, lively, clear. The fireworks showed in her eyes. Caleb watched her watch them. She turned slightly, and a smile appeared. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It is," he agreed. They stood side by side, silent. She lifted a brow almost unseen. He breathed in slowly. "You're cold." She looked at him. He offered his empty hand. She put both of hers inside it. They watched the next bursts together. The explosions softly ended in a faint shine. Rachel's eyes moved back to him. "Why are you always noticing the little things?" she asked, her voice held between wonder and weakness. He thought. The fireworks ended. The night air was gentle. "Because I know what it's like when no one notices," he said quietly. Her heart jumped. That phrase felt like a secret shared. She looked down at their held hands. His hand was warm, firm. His thumb moved over her fingers. She looked back at the sky, then back at him. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed gently. "Always." They stayed like that, holding hands, not kissing just yet, but connected. 2 people whose lives had slowly joined past jobs and papers. Behind them, clapping grew in the ballroom, welcoming the guests back inside. They stayed a few more moments because neither wanted to hurry back to light talks. Now came the real peak, not of fireworks, but of truth. "Rachel," Caleb began, his voice low. She looked up at his profile lit by stars. "I can't promise it will always be perfect," he said, "but I promise I'll keep noticing." She leaned in. The wrap fell, showing more of her shoulder, but she shivered less than earlier. Their eyes met, no words needed. Then he stepped closer, softly lifted her chin up. The office was quieter than usual. It was after 7 p.m., and most of the floor was dark except for a corner cubicle where soft typing could still be heard. Caleb passed by on his way to pick up a folder he had forgotten, but something in the quietness made him stop. Inside the cubicle sat Mia, one of the youngest people on the data team. Her face was pale, eyes red from what she thought were unseen tears. Caleb leaned softly on the edge of the cubicle and spoke softly. "You okay?" She jumped quickly, drying her face. Yes, it's nothing." Caleb didn't push. He sat on the chair across from her and just waited. After a few moments, she said quietly, "I messed up a paper. Bad. It's going to hurt next week's client talk. I don't know if I fit in here." Caleb nodded slowly. "You think the rest of us never make mistakes?" She blinked, surprised. "But you're calm. You always look like you're in control." "I used to be an engineer," he said. "Once sent out a product fix that broke a whole system for 3 days. I thought I'd never get a new chance." "What happened?" He smiled a bit. "Someone sat down across from me and said, 'You're allowed to fail. You're not allowed to give up.' So I didn't." Mia exhaled. Some of the stress in her shoulders lessened. "Redo the report," he added. "If you want, I'll check it with you. You're not alone in this." From across the glass wall, Rachel had been walking down the hallway and stopped. She saw the scene, Caleb's calm presence, the way Mia's body changed from loss to firmness. It wasn't big, but it was leadership. Quiet, human, real. Later, as they walked out of the building together, Rachel finally said, "You make me think again how I lead." He looked at her. She continued, "All this time I thought leadership was about being in front of everyone. But maybe it's more about walking next to others." Caleb smiled, his hands in his jacket pockets. "Leadership doesn't start with power. It starts with presence." They reached the sidewalk edge. Her car was still at the shop, and he offered her a drive home again. She agreed. Inside the car, the city lights flashed by. Rachel leaned her head back against the seat, letting out a soft breath. "You're right," she said. "You don't have to say much to change something for someone." He glanced at her. "Neither do you." She turned to him, her lips curving. "You always notice more than people think you do." "I used to miss things," he said, his voice soft. "Now I try not to." The car grew quiet again. A calm quiet. Soft music played low from the speakers. As the traffic slowed, Rachel's eyes began to close. The tiredness of the week, the feeling's weight of all, finally settled. She didn't mean to fall asleep, but within minutes, her breathing calmed, head leaning a little to one side, hair brushing her cheek. Caleb noticed. At the next red light, he turned slightly toward her. A few bits of her light hair had stuck at the corner of her lips. Gently, without a noise, he lifted a hand, paused just a bit away. He paused. Something inside him moved. Not the burst of strong liking, but something older, warmer, a feeling of knowing, of having found something he thought he had lost for good. As his fingers softly moved the hair away from her face, Rachel stirred. Her eyes opened slightly for a second. Neither of them moved. Her eyes met his. His hand still hung near her cheek. He began, moving back fast. "Sorry, your hair." Her face reddened, but her eyes didn't leave his. "It's okay." They didn't say anything more, but the mood between them changed. Something unsaid, clear, began to grow. When they reached her building, he stepped out and opened her door like always. She stepped out slowly, turning back to him with a look kinder than usual. "Thank you," she said, "for tonight, for earlier, for seeing people." His answer was a small, knowing nod. As she walked up the stairs, she looked back once. He was still standing there, hands in his coat pockets, watching her, not to own, but quiet respect. Inside her apartment, Rachel leaned against the door for a moment, put a hand to her chest. It wasn't just thanks. It was the beginning of something else. Something no business course, no leader training, no boss meeting had ever taught her. She smiled because some lessons, the ones that matter most, can only be learned from someone who has lived them. The auditorium was filled with soft applause as Rachel stepped onto the stage. A large screen behind her showed the logo of Donovan Corp., along with the title of the program she had supported over the past year. The Second Door, Hiring Without Favor. It had become more than a test idea. It had become a nationwide talk. Applause began again, cameras flashing. But while her name was written in bold on the paper she got, while her photo would be shown in business papers the following week, Rachel's eyes looked at the back of the room. Past the lights, past the applause, Caleb stood near the exit, not on stage, not in the bright light, just as he preferred. He caught her eye. She gave a small nod. Later, as the crowd left and the news moved on, Rachel went out the side door and found him waiting near the lobby's big glass windows. "You stood back," she said. "I always do," he said with a soft smile. She stepped closer. "You're the reason I stood up there tonight." He shook his head a bit. "You were always going to stand up there." Rachel looked down for a moment, then softly took his hand. "I don't love you because you were kind to me when my card was rejected," she said. "I love you because you're kind when no one's watching." His fingers curled around hers by instinct. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Outside, the city hummed like it always did, but for them, the night had a quietness they both knew. Later, they found themselves back at the same coffee shop where it had all begun. The rain had stopped, but the sidewalk was still wet, showing the gold light from the windows inside. They ordered 2 coffees, hers with oat milk, his black. The barista smiled, recognizing them slightly from that article about the Donovan's boss. Rachel reached into her purse and took out her card, held it up with a small smile. "What if it is rejected again?" Caleb leaned a little forward, his voice low. "Then I'll just scan mine again," he said, eyes shining. "Some habits are tough to stop." She handed over her card. The machine beeped. Approved. They both laughed. But then she became quiet, looked down at her coffee, then back up at him. "You know what I think about sometimes?" she asked. "What if that day you hadn't been in line behind me? What if you had looked away?" Caleb leaned back, thinking. "I think we still would have met, just somewhere else. Kindness needs no timing. It just needs 2 people ready to see each other." She nodded. Outside, a soft wind blew. Inside, the warmth of the coffee, the sound of soft music, the load of a year full of changes and choices. Rachel reached across the table and put her hand over his. "This," she said, her voice nearly a whisper, "was never just about a coffee." "No," Caleb said, his thumb rubbing against hers. "It was about someone seeing someone and choosing to stay." The machine behind the counter rang again, another order ready. But for Rachel and Caleb, their beginning had already been made and given quietly, kindly, and just the way they needed. And the future? Well, it felt a lot like coffee and bravery. If this story moved your heart the way Caleb's quiet kindness touched Rachel's life, we invite you to stay for more. At Heart-Moving Stories, we believe that even the smallest deeds, like paying for a stranger's coffee, can change how a life goes. And sometimes they lead to something even greater, a bond, a second chance, or a love that grows quietly before it talks. If you believe in love that grows softly, in second chances, and in the power of daily good, subscribe to Heart-Moving Stories and click the bell sign. New stories every week, made to warm your heart and remind you the softest times often leave the deepest sign. Thank you for watching. And remember, kindness is never lost.